Hello, welcome back to RAP4. Omar Mesa here. This is a comprehensive video about the 468. Alright, let's get started. 468, you'll get it basically, it's a customizable platform, so you'll get it in any number of ways as far as what an upper receiver is and your lower receiver. But I'm going to give you pretty much the most standard setup. This one will differ from the most standard because it's using a rifle length polymer handguard. But other than that, this is pretty much the run-of-the-mill 468 how you get it. It has our RAP4 pistol grip, internal airline, so pretty standard. You'll get this in a box basically side by side. You'll have the upper receiver on one side and the lower receiver in the other. This comes primarily in two different configurations. You either have the air in the stock or you have a remote line through the stock. So you'll either get it with this or you get it with this. Now it's a matter of preference, which one is better. There's no right or wrong in this situation. However, this tank right here will yield you about 140 shots, and if you have a remote line, will yield you whatever your tank you have on your back or you're carrying, which is a whole bunch more shots. Okay, but we're going to look at this one because this is the preferred method and basically the way the 468 was designed to be used. So let's start with that. Okay, when you first get your 468, you're going to get it like this. This is probably going to be taped down. Why? Because this is the bolt carrier pin that can get lost. Now, we get started on this. First thing you want to do is cock this back before you take this off, because if you don't, the striker can misalign. So let's go ahead and see that. So you can do this by hand, cock it back. It's in the cocked position now. Obviously, use good, firearm practices. Keep your finger off the trigger till you're ready to shoot. This applies with paintball guns and pretty much anything that has a trigger. So at this point, we're going to start disassembling it because you just got this and you need to get some air into your system. And you want to be familiarized with the 468, not just get started and air it up and shooting. If you do, it'll probably come assembled like this. All you want to do is take this to basically your dive shop or whoever is your paintball field. They connect this, they fill this up to 3000 psi and you're ready to go. Now, it is good practice to be familiarized with what your system is so you know its idiosyncrasies. Let's start taking it apart. What you want to do is remove the buttstock, okay? Our RAP4 buttstocks, you only press this down and this slides down on the way. The proper way, or other manufacturers, what they do, they bring this down and then you have to pull this down to remove it. I'm going to show you with this buttstock right here. See how this comes out? But it has a stop. In order to take it out, you have to pull that out to a certain point and there we go. Okay, that's the proper way of doing it. These right here don't quite have that, but it's very good, very easy access. So this is more for the paintballer in mind. Easy access, so you can take it out, do your velocity adjustment and whatnot. So it works. Just be mindful of that when you're pulling it back for your length of pull, that you don't pull it right off. Here you have your tank. You're gonna press your guide bar. This is what keeps your buttstock from rotating freely. So you press this button right here, and now you have your tank. Now, this is before you ever aired it up, or if you've already aired it up, you want to remove this before you get into any of your internal components. It's actually a good measure to remove the tank before you even split the receiver. But again, from a new gun, it will be split for you already, so this is what we do. Take off the tank. Tank comes off. All right, at this point, we have the lower receiver. We're going to gain access to the velocity adjustment, the drive spring, and the striker. Okay, this all comes together all at once. So there we go. We do it's a twist lock mechanism. So let me go ahead and do that again. So this comes in. Now this is under quite a bit of spring tension. So you're going to press it in and twist it counterclockwise to take it out. Okay. Here's your spring. Now, I'm going to put this over that because it's the way that you get it when it's brand new. It's full of grease, and it's just it's good measure to have it that way. Now, since we're on the grease factor, these really would, all these systems really prefer a silicone oil during operation, but this really depends on the user. All right, magwell. All these we haven't gone to the pins yet, but they're all push takedown pins that don't come off the receiver. But what you want to do with this is just push it out, pull it all the way, and you take your mag well, and you also get this part right here, which is the anti-drop mechanism. So with that, and I'll explain more to you about what the anti-drop is, but the anti-drop is something to prevent paintballs or first strike rounds or shape projectile rounds from coming out of the mag well when you're doing tactical reloads. That's a very important thing, and currently the 468 is the only system and platform that you can do that with. Okay, at this point we pretty much have a full breakdown. This is just so you know exactly what the system is, what your components are. For the troubleshooting part of the video, we'll get into the inside of the valve and what you want to look out for, leaks and everything else. Right now we're just doing kind of a very general standard of what you should break down in between games, or you know, to clean it up and whatnot. So here we go. This is the main breakdown of the load receiver. You have your striker, you have your buffer, your striker spring or your velocity spring, velocity adjustment. Velocity adjusts by turning this counterclockwise. So if you're looking at it, you're turning counterclockwise and clockwise to decrease it, counterclockwise to increase, and counterclockwise to decrease. Okay, you will get this all the way in, so you cannot decrease the velocity any more than you will get this. So you know, and we'll touch up on how velocity issues and what you can do to drop your velocity further if you have to on the troubleshooting side. Again, this was developed as a training tool, so it generally runs right at the 300 mark, so it runs a little hot. Okay, now we go back. So your mag well, you insert it right here. You have two rail tabs. You come down on it, slide it in. This is what you should expect at this point. You have your takedown pin. Now, your takedown pin, what you want to do is take it to a halfway point right here. And you'll see it from the inside. You don't want to go through all the way because you have not installed your anti-drop kit yet. So you want to put it just to the first tab. There's a hinge. Let me go ahead and actually point that out to you before we do that. The way this fits when it's inside there, it goes inside. These get connected through the hinge. So this is a hinge tab, which is also what holds your mag well in place. This is what we want to install once the mag well is on. So you'll take this off, put it through. At this point, what you want to do, you can do this either from the top or from the bottom, but there's a step on the mag well where the anti-drop mechanism will click onto. So we'll put it through. There we go. So it went right through. Now, at this point, you'll see that it's down. You don't want to keep it down or else your upper receiver won't be able to close. You want to press it in until it goes click. Okay? You can inspect this to see that it's correct by kind of manually opening, and you'll see that the trap mechanism basically is once the arches basically connect, it will open the path for the paintball or shape projectiles, and when it's not, well, it won't. And the way that works, just to show you, there's a paintball that's in there, but it's not dropping out because, so I can take it this way, it'll drop out. Sorry. If I go that direction, it won't drop out because of the trap mechanism. If I press that in, it will fall out. So you can just kind of inspect that it's working properly at that point. All right, so we're good there. There's a seal that goes in between your upper and lower receiver. It's pretty self-explanatory. Just align it with the hole. Now, this is something that's easy to get lost, so be mindful of it, and of course you have extras. So we got the mag well assembled, we got everything there. We're gonna start assembling the drivetrain of this. So what we do, we take our striker, okay? What you wanna do is you put in the striker till it stops. And then basically you can do this with your finger, so no air source attached. You take your safety down, you want to press it in, and you shoot it. Basically you pull the trigger as you're inserting the striker to get past the sear. Okay, then it's there. You will see the space for the bolt carrier pin. You're gonna want to align it at that point, put it inside. There we go. That's kind of how that will operate right there. Now, to make this a lot easier for you, this is a good point. Again, without air, use your trigger, push this forward, push the bolt carrier pin forward to release the striker from the sear. There we go. It's in the forward position now. Now, the reason why I'm suggesting that you do this, because it's going to make your life a lot easier to insert your striker spring and whole rear assembly. Okay, so we put the spring inside, you take your buffer, put the buffer in there as well, velocity adjustment. Now we're going to go clockwise to lock it in, so put it in all the way and clockwise. You want to cock this back before you assemble it, because right now the valve is in an open position, so if you put the air source, it's just gonna, you're gonna get air coming out the port here, and you don't want that. Okay, so it's in there. Okay, it goes in clockwise, take it, cock it back. Now it's in a cocked position. You want to just kind of leave it alone at that point. Once again, my seal between the upper and lower is, there we go. Okay. There we go. Now, a little trick to these pins right here. Sometimes they're a little sticky, so it has a little detent inside that acts like a deadbolt. You have to get past that deadbolt so the takedown pin opens. So there's multiple ways of doing it. I like to get basically the tip of my knuckle and just kind of give it a smack like that, and that's good enough. When you have the upper receiver, you want to kind of do a twisting motion, which I'll show you shortly how that works, but you want to get that out there. All right. At this point, the proper way, again, if you want to do this without air having anything to do with it, you're going to take your upper receiver, you take the hinge, front hinge point, and kind of align the holes. There we go. Now this has been aligned, and that's your positioning right there. Okay. At this point, this is a very critical part in how you use the 468, and basically what you need to know. You always want to make sure that your bolt carrier is aligned. Your bolt and bolt carrier is aligned with your bolt carrier pin, because this is an area that can cause you some problems, and this is basically the hardest or the biggest learning curve of the 468 versus other systems. Other systems don't allow you to split the receiver this way, so therefore this is what you must learn with the 468. And just its mechanism. As far as the upper goes, we haven't really gotten into much detail, but the upper is pretty simple. You have your charging handle assembly. It does not come out. It's all there. There is a full teardown that you can gain access to all those components, but the truth is that they rarely fail, and I mean you don't need to do much to service or to take care of them. Lock bolt systems inside here. Lock bolt's kind of an interesting widget there, because what it is, it's a set of mechanical eyes. I'm going to show you kind of how that operates. Here, I'm going to take this down again. So I'm taking the bolt carrier pin, I took off my lower receiver, and I'm putting it right here so I can cycle the bolt. Okay, now this is what I want to show you. Basically, with this type of system, the bolt and bolt carrier move forward with the striker. It's an open bolt system, so it hits the poppet and you get blowback and everything comes right back. On a normal paintball marker, what you'll get, which the system has been around forever, so it's and by this system I mean the type of valve system that this is using. It's one of the first and most trusted systems in paintball, so that's why we went with it. What you want to do is, well, what the lock bolt's doing actually, it's stopping the bolt from going forward unless there's a round, and that be either a shaped projectile or a paintball round that's properly chambered in order to allow the bolt to go forward. So right now, I'm trying to push it forward, but it does not go forward because there is no round pressing the secondary sear that the lock bolt unit utilizes. So I'm going to go ahead and press that sear down out of the way, and now you can see how the bolt moves forward. Now, with that bolt moving forward, that's your firing cycle on a paintball marker, and that's how it operates here. But you actually need the round to press the lock bolt system out of the way for the bolt to come forward. Otherwise, it will not do it. Now, the greatest advantage to that is that chops are a thing of the past. I mean, to 99.9%. I mean, there's been very few cases of chopping on this thing directly, and it's been out almost a year now. And we have people out there that have never had a chop, not once. And that's something to be said about the lock bolt. Now, that does not mean that brakes are impossible and that this is a system that you'll never see or never have to clean broken paint. That is not the case. There are certain mistakes that can be made that will crush paint inside the chamber because the mag well was inserted wrong. So it's something that we can touch up a little bit later. You could also have a paintball break in the barrel because the integrity of the paintball has been compromised either by conditions of the paintball itself or weather or many other things. So you'll still have to put a squeegee to this thing every once in a while and keep it clean to get the best accuracy and consistency out of your shots. Okay, but the actual chop, which a chop, if we define it by a paintball being halfway into the breech, getting hit by a bolt and being cut in half, or any of the moon stages, crescent shape or whatever, the chop is not happening anymore because of the lock bolt. Okay, the lock bolt also does a great feature, which, you know, this is for a tactical side of paintball, if you want to look at it that way. When you run out of air on a standard paintball marker, everybody knows, because there's a very distinct burping sound that the bolts is bouncing, and the bolt and bolt carrier and the striker is bouncing off the poppet, and it's just going. So everybody knows you're out of air. People will come after you, and you're gonna lose the game, unless you have a pistol or something. But okay, so that's the secondary part of the lock bolt, which is very nice. Even third one would be with a system like this with a 468. It's out of rounds indicator. So just like a AR-15 M4 platform, when you're out of rounds, it's going to lock back, and you have to insert a new mag and go through a sequence of movements before you're back and ready to go. On an AR M4, you can either pull the charging handle back or hit the bolt release. Now, this is an open bolt system, so hitting the bolt release will actually cause it to fire, so it doesn't have a bolt release. Okay, closed bolt systems in the future will implement that technology, but right now we're talking about your standard 468. It does not. Okay, so we were in the assembly process of the 468. I think that covers mostly what you want to know about your upper receiver, your lock bolt, your maintenance of your lock bolt. It's just keeping it clean. That's it. All right, we take our bolt carrier pin, reinsert it on the striker. Remember, the striker was cocked back, so the alignment hole is facing the zenith or facing up. So you want to make sure that that's in place. We take our pin again. This is a long handguard, so it's a little hard to maneuver. Okay, so your bolts and bolt carrier. Now, right now, it just aligned perfectly. Lucky me. It's not always going to happen. Okay, so what you want to do is be familiarized with what you're doing. And what you're doing is you're taking your bolt and you're aligning it to the bolt carrier pin as you're closing it. That's what you're doing. That's what you want to do. Now, in this case, like I said, it just happened to be right there and everything was just fine and dandy, but sometimes life is not going to treat you so nice. So, take your bolt carrier pin. Now, if it comes out on the top, it's actually kind of a nice thing because you have access to take it out. See, it gets stuck in the top. You actually have something to handle and take out your bolt. But be mindful because this is a part you can lose. You do get an extra one inside your parts kit, but if you didn't bring it with you, you're out in the field, it's gonna be a problem. All right, so you take this. Now, just to give you an explanation, being inside here, what you're gonna do, so let's say it's slightly unaligned. You're gonna pull the charging handle ever so slightly till it aligns and then closes up, okay? I'm gonna show you what that's like right now. So I'm going to overcompensate for this by putting this a little farther back so the lock bolt's holding it in place. Now, when I said that you get lucky and it aligns properly, most of them align properly for the most part, but you still want to know how to overcome that just in case you don't. Okay, so right there, I cannot close the receiver. I cannot do anything more. So I'm going to take the charging handle back, pull it ever so slightly till I feel it drop down, and now it's dropped down. Okay, without air, this is what you want to do to make sure that the bolt carrier, bolt, and striker are properly aligned. You're gonna pull the trigger, cock it back, pull the trigger, cock it back. Okay. When this is pulled back, cocked back, actually let me go ahead and fire it. As you can see, this is the lock bolt catching. Click. That's what it's doing. The bolt's not going forward. You have a chamber indicator right here, and you can see that there's no bolt there. Okay. What you want to do to fully test this, I mean, if you really want to know, be sure that that is aligned. You kind of hold your charging handle back. I'm going to use my guide bar here. The lock bolt's a shiny basically steel component in contrast to a black anodized aluminum all around it, so it's very easy to see. I'm going to press it down out of the way as I'm holding the charging handle back. If you don't do that, it's gonna bite the lock bolt, and you don't want that either. Okay, so I do it just till the bolt gets past. The bolt is forward. At this point, your trigger should be inactive and doing nothing. Now we're at the point of airing up your system, aligning your buttstock. Okay, something more before we get there, I'm sorry. Something more needs to be said. Cocking it back. Over the past year, I've seen a lot of people do this. They take it back and they feel it stops. This is a very comfortable pull. And they stop here and they go, okay, they click it the first time, click, it hits a lock bolt, they do it again, trigger's inactive, they do it again, trigger's inactive, and again, trigger's inactive. You want to take this right here, take it to your first stop. That's where you're actually starting to cock or charge or actually move the bolt carrier back. So this whole area right here is just, it's just a, you know, a dead movement. Okay, it's actually till you get to stop, that's when you start cocking it back. That's where it takes some effort and force, and you hear that click. It's actually kind of a distinct, audible signature of what the difference is. So I'm gonna go ahead and fire it off again. It's hitting the lock bolt. If I do this, nothing's gonna happen. So I take it to this point where it starts and click back. It actually pings. It goes bing. Okay. Granted, if you're in the middle of a game, you're not going to know, you're not going to hear that. But by that point, I hope that you're familiarized with what it feels like. This is going to go to this point, and you take it back all the way. It's that last bit right there that's going to cock it back every time. Cool. All right, so now we're at the air stage. So you got this filled up, 3,000 PSI if you're going to do this option. You know, use all your care and handling with air sources. Don't leave this in the car, you know, everything else that you want to do. So just, this is a lot of pressure. You want to take the right precautions. Installing your air source, it's just thread it onto the ASA on the receiver, the ASA adapter. You're going to put it in. Now, at some point you will hear, once it gets past the blow off relief port right there, you're going to hear it air up. It's going to go, basically there's like a little hiss sound that you need to go. Okay, now, very important. This tank does not need, under design, testing, and operation, does not need to be tightened down all the way where it can't move anymore. Okay, it's not needed, it's not required. And in most cases you don't want to do it because there's no way to control where this is going to end up. So right now the valve is facing that way, pretty much like the 2 o'clock position. You don't want that because, well, number one, remember you have to put this all the way back. If the valve is here, I'm sorry, the gauge. If the gauge is here, you can't cock it back. If the lock bolt activates, you cannot recock it because the gauge is in the way. So you screwed it in all the way and you take it back about that much. About that much is the gauge. You want the gauge in about the 5 o'clock position when you're facing the rifle. So if I'm facing out this way, I want the gauge to be at 5 o'clock position. Okay? There's a reason for that because now you have access to your velocity adjustment and everything, even if the air tank is on. That's very useful because we get to the chrono. You can press this out of the way and I can adjust my velocity while the air source is on and everything else. Okay, there's also a hex wrench tool, setting that you can go through this whole assembly and use it, but realistically this thing was made to be toolless, so you want to go about it this way. Alright, okay, it's a little tricky to get in there, but there we go. Remember, it's counterclockwise, well, clockwise to put it back in, counterclockwise to remove. Now we're at a point at the guide bar. Okay, we put this inside while pressing the button, and now you want to press this all the way in. Okay, and you're going to test by manually grabbing this bar and pulling on it. You want to test that, just make sure that it's not going to fall apart on you out in the field or anything else. Once it's in there, it's very secure. It's not going to go anywhere. Take your buttstock, put it over the guide bar, align everything together. In this case, you can press it out of the way, and it's in there. You now have a 468 that's properly functioning, aired up, adequately assembled, to the point where it's going to be safe. You're going to protect the receiver, and you'll have no problems. Okay, we can go ahead and test it. So cock it all the way back, lock bolt engaged, cock it all the way back, lock bolt engaged. I'm going to go ahead and show you the DMAG system, this with the 468, what you're going to do with it. Now, there are other methods or other magazine systems that the 468 is adaptable to use, but the future of our magazine systems will be the DMAG tower, the DMAG platform. Not necessarily the DMAG itself, but at least the DMAG dimensions. Very simple. You take your DMAG, you have your paintballs. Okay, this is a twin 10 stack rounds. It's a 20 round magazine, meaning there's 10 rounds on either side, and that should probably be more than enough. Okay, so you take your magazine and the rounds just go right over the top and down. That's it. That's all it really takes to load your rounds. Okay. Perfect. All the way down. You count your 10 rounds. Now, when you get to the end, you want the follower to lock down in there. Now, you can do this either kind of by pressing on the stack of paintballs and the locking mechanism at the same time. Okay. There we go. So the stack is now locked in there, and what that means is that you have no pressure inside your paintballs or on your paintballs that will dimple them or change the shape. In most cases, in a very hot, humid day, well, it's going to change shape just because it's very hot and humid. But this will alleviate a lot of that. So now, there's another way to do this ahead of time. You can take a dowel, something that's about that same size. Take your follower, press it down, pre-lock it before you load your rounds. That's another way of doing it. Either which way, you'll get familiarized with the DMAGs and how they work like that. Okay. Before we load the DMAG onto the 468, I want to explain to you about the anti-drop system and how and what it does. I already showed you the positive side of the, basically the tactical reload and what you can do, so you can take out a magazine without dropping rounds. But let me tell you what it also does. It kind of holds 2 rounds as a buffer. So 2 rounds that will not be shot are inside there. So if you want to shoot your 10 rounds out of your magazine, you want to preload your 468 with 2 paintballs or 2 shape projectiles and so forth. Okay, your DMAG, same thing. We have shape projectile DMAGs where the same loading process, you take your shape projectile and put it right over the top and it drops down. Same thing. Okay, so how do you put inside, or how do you put in the buffer rounds and remove the buffer rounds? It's a good time to do it. So, cock it back. Again, always cock it back before anything you do. Before you open it, before you close it. It's even safe practice to cock it back before you're loading a magazine, just so you're ready to fire as soon as you put it in. Okay, you take it around, put it on the trap system, which is not going to drop in because it's trapping it from coming out, but also from coming in. You take it past there and just press it inside. Now we have 2 rounds inside there. Okay, so you have these 2 rounds. So now you'll fire a full 10 rounds out of your magazine, or if it's a 20 round magazine, you'll fire a full 20 rounds, and so on and so on. Okay, but you don't need to worry. Those 2 rounds will not fire because the lock bolt is not being activated. Okay, or deactivated technically. Okay. All right. So what you want to do is you kind of put it inside right there. There's 2 ways to go about this. Number 1, you can kind of put it in there and just kind of, as you're inserting, kind of rotate back towards you. There we go. And that's in there. Okay? You will be able to know because your mag catch will be flush with the mag well, and you'll see that the mag's in there, is secure. And that didn't really take that much effort at all. Okay? Another way to do it, so release your magazine. Okay, another way to do it, I'm going to press that in just so you kind of have what it will look like when you're starting. Another way to do that in there, just kind of, as you're doing this, take your mag to the side and give it a tap down at the bottom. It will also get inside there. So we're going to take the loaded side and hit it inside, okay, now we have rounds in the magazine and rounds inside the marker. Because of the trap system, the anti-drop system, you can do tactical reloads. So what does that mean? You take bang, 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 you take your multiple shots, drop out your mag, you can kind of check that you still have rounds in there, or perhaps you're about to, you know, go into a sticky situation where you already fired off most of your rounds. You take out your mag anyway and reinsert with a new one, but without dropping rounds. All right, so that's basically how it'll operate. That's what you want to do with the magazine and how that will fire. Ultimately, you can do, again, get familiarized with that. Doing tactical reloads is really what this platform was designed to be able to do, to train with it. To train with it as you would train to fight. You know, so you train as you fight. That's what this whole thing was designed to do. Is that's its design intent. Okay, so and again, this all these features we're implementing are future designs of magazines and everything. So it's really gonna take you quite a bit further there into the future. All right. So once again, removing these rounds. So let's say you're in the safe area, you put your barrel sock on and whatnot. You press it in there. Now I want to mention something. 3 rounds came out. Why? Because we ejected the magazine in an in-between stage. So if you do a tactical reload, the trap system is designed to hold 3 during an in-between. So if you have a partially empty mag, you take it out, you're gonna end up having 3 in there. If you fire all the rounds in the magazine, you will only be left over with 2. Okay? That's pretty much it with your standard operation of the 468. Make sure that the tank and gauge are here, basically away from the charging handle. Again, if you're looking out this way, you want it to be, well, that would actually turn into the 7 o'clock position, but if you're looking this way, it's a 5 o'clock. But just let me go ahead and show you. It's going to be right next to the buttstock guide bar. Okay, that's the best place for it. Now, there is another option that some of you may prefer, and I would recommend it. This is the standard 3000 PSI Ninja regulator, which is a very nice regulator. But there's also the Ninja Pro regulator, which incorporates a couple of things that are very, very nice, which is number one, the gauge has a much smaller gauge, about half the size of this. So now you can align it anywhere you want and cock it back and it's not going to interfere. So that's a very nifty feature. It's also adjustable, so you can adjust different pressures if you ever wanted to do like a tuning to your system, because this is a highly tunable platform. You can change everything from the valve, how much spring tension it uses. I mean, it's a highly adaptable system. So, but in this case, we're talking about kind of your standard 468, so we'll leave it off right there for that part. Okay. Troubleshooting. So let's go ahead and start the troubleshooting section. You know, what can go wrong? And well, let's start right now with a failure to recock. Okay, that's probably the number one failure point that you're gonna have, if any. But that's because of the system, that's what you're gonna get, that's what you will end up having. So, there we go. You fire, it'll go bang, but it won't recock. Okay, if the problem is really bad, meaning your blowback mechanism is working very inefficiently, you will hear that telltale out of air burping. But that actually doesn't happen very often because of the lock bolt, once again. If the gun is cycling within pretty 70% of its capacity, it will cock back enough for the lock bolt to grab it, but it won't cock back enough for you to take the following shot. Okay, that's also something else you can kind of verify. So if you're running out of air, normally during your cycle, so let's say you're about 150 shots, 140 I mentioned earlier, you'll take one shot, it'll fire, but it won't recock. You cock it again, it'll fire, but it won't recock. Fire it again. It's usually a sign that you're out of air. Okay, so it won't do the burping sound, but it means that you're out of air. You can check your gauge and you'll see that you don't have enough air pressure to go through the firing sequence. Okay? All right, so that's your first step. Make sure you have air. I don't want to call it troubleshooting, but it's actually a troubleshooting tool. make sure you have air. Okay, so back again to disassembly. Make sure you cock it back all the way. That's the first thing you want to do. Take off your buttstock. Okay. These came apart, but it's actually no problem. Put it right back in place. Remove your air source. All right. Take your 468, pin out. Again, before you do this, you want to make sure that you cocked it back, pin out, split the receiver, take out your bolt and bolt carrier. These came together, like I mentioned before. It can be here, but in this case, since we're doing basically your first step in troubleshooting, take your velocity adjustment bar out. Okay, and at this point you want to take out your striker. There you go. Pretty much what will be affected if your marker is not firing properly, meaning it has a failure to cycle, it will be this one O-ring right here. I'm going to point to it with the bolt itself. This one O-ring. This is what makes this thing cycle back and recock. That's it. Check this. Check if it's broken, if it's worn out, if anything. That's the one you have to look out for, and that's what you'll be changing. Okay, that's pretty much it on that one. That will solve most of the issues when you have a failure to recock. Okay. Leaks would probably be the second thing to look at on troubleshooting. You're not holding air very long, or if you leave it overnight and it basically empties out, you want to look in a couple of areas. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take this part again. Now, I mentioned earlier that if you want to take off this and it's a little hard to get out, you can either kind of tap the takedown pin, or as you're taking it out, just kind of wiggle from side to side the upper receiver, and you'll notice how it just kind of almost takes the pin out for you, which is very nice. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take out the magwell and trap system. Magwell, trap system, they're out, the anti-drop kit. Okay, this is actually a troubleshooting guide at this point. With the striker removed and everything out of place, this is a place where you can kind of use your air source to find out what's happening. You put it back inside. At this point, it doesn't matter. Go ahead and put it in as far as you want, because you're not sticking anything in there. Okay, so this goes inside. This is a place you'll see whether this is holding air. If it's not holding air, you need to identify where the air is coming from. You know, I would say listen to it, but listening to it is kind of a dangerous method of doing it, because you're putting your ear or your face to where it is. Granted, many of us do that, but the preferred way, if you're able to, if you're not out in the field, get yourself a little bit of water. Okay, so first thing you want to do is submerge the tip till, I'm going to say, the O on the stop. If you can see that right there. All right, and you're going to confirm that the leak is not coming from there. That's my so to the O on the stop. You submerge that in water. If you see that it's you have air bubbles coming out, well then you know, or you'll identify that the air is being leaked out from the valve cover assembly area or something along those lines. Okay, the second place where, and truthfully the most common, if you're going to have a leak at all, will be from the poppet exhaust port. Okay, and that means that you had some debris get caught between your poppet and the valve face, or, you know, I mean, that's usually the case, or you have a bad poppet. I mean, there is no guarantee in life that everything is 100%, so what we can guarantee is for you to recover from it, and to recover from it very easily. Okay, so we're going to take our velocity adjuster. So now we're going to go ahead and, well, before that, you would remove your air source because you identified that the air is leaking from your poppet exhaust port. So let's go ahead and remove the air source. Okay, and now this is a totally toolless system or an integrated tool system, depends on which way you want to look at it. Okay, so we're going to take out the valve cover assembly. We're going to use our velocity adjuster. We align that part right there. we take the back of the bolt. So this is where it's no longer toolless, but you don't have to have any special tools. You have all the tools you need within your own marker. So I press this through. I gained access to my basically the push pin that holds everything there. Take that out. As you're pressing this is on the spring tension, so you hold that out, and now we took off the front valve cover. Now, front valve cover is very important because it's not an active O-ring, but there is an O-ring holding back air. Now, it can be damaged when you're reinserting it or reattaching it to the marker. That's usually when it gets damaged. It's not something that you'll see much from a factory setting. Granted, it's possible, but very rare because, you know, these are assembled with care. Okay, so in this scenario, we had a poppet issue. So this is your poppet and your firing pin. And you would inspect the front of the firing pin, the front of the poppet to see if it has any debris either attached to it or on it and everything else. And you would look at the valve face. So you look inside, you look at the valve face and make sure that you don't have any debris around there. If it's not debris, it could be a micro crack or it could be any number of things. This is a Teflon poppet, so it actually adapts to the shape of the valve and the opening. So your best bet is just to unscrew your firing pin from the poppet, take a new poppet from your parts bag and replace it if the leak is coming from there. Now the other place where you would have a kind of factory, I'm gonna say leak, if you ever got this. Now keep in mind that all of these are tested before they go out, but sometimes O-rings have a lifespan that are shorter than others, or temperature fluctuations change that. So don't think that if you got yourself a marker that leaked, it wasn't tested or ran through. It's just, it happened to be luck of the draw that that particular O-ring or poppet or anything just kind of gave way. It happens. Okay. Again, showing you how to recover from any of this and having a stable platform is what we're truly interested in. So, you know, not being miraculously error-free, which is just not possible. Okay. The place where you could have a leak that you can either basically contact our RMA department or take care of it yourself. Usually the best way is to try to take care of it yourself first. If you're unable to accomplish it, then go ahead and contact us and we'll replace it for you or take care of that for you. You have 4 set screws, 2 in each hole in the front, and you have another 2 on the back near the ASA. Again, it's very rare that it happens, but I have seen it at least a couple times where these are leaking air out of these. Not much, it's normally a slow leak, but any leak is terrible in a pneumatic system. So what you want to do with that is you take that out. You take that out with I believe a 2mm Allen key, and then there is a rubber gasket that goes in between another set screw, so you would replace that little rubber gasket. And what you can use is basically it's the same diameter as an O-ring, so you cut a little piece and put it in between there. Like I said, that's normally something that you can try to do yourself, and you know, once you've done it, there's really no science to it or nothing to hold you back. But that's a factory issue that we should take care of for you, so you can send it back for that reason. Okay, reassembly. In this case, it was a poppet where we changed it. There's a flat on the poppet and the firing pin. You want to make sure that that's inserted and aligned in the facing. So you have the exhaust port hole, you're gonna be able to see the flat. Make sure you put that in there correctly, or else that may cause you to dump out all your air because the flat is not in the correct place and the firing pin is going to get seized in the forward position or in the fired position, and well, that would just empty out all your air. So make sure you don't do that. Okay, at this point you put it all the way in there. You can just kind of inspect, you can check that it is a flat facing up, which it is in this case. We take our valve. Now if you did this in the dirt or somewhere else, well, make sure you wipe this down first, or else you're gonna, you know, basically damage the front O-ring, and then you will have a new leak that you didn't have before. So okay, Very simple. To take this out, you're going to want to take your pin that came out of there, but use the same direction that you took it out of, okay? Now there's a knurling on one of the sides of the pin and not on the other, so I suggest that you take it out opposite from the knurling. So the knurling comes out first, you don't put it any deeper into the marker, okay? And that just gets pressed till it's flush all the way through, and at this point you take your air source, reattach it, it'll hiss, it'll do its thing, and you check out. By this point you will have no more leak, okay? Because you went through the steps to solve any leak issues. All right, so that's it as far as that part of the troubleshooting. Now let's talk about some other things that we've seen over the past year, and this is perhaps the most important one and something to keep track of and what you can do about it, and also basically what the steps to take. Okay, this one is all about the bolt carrier pin. The bolt carrier pin has been, design was changed from the moment this was designed to the moment it was basically put out into the market, because we wanted to make it easier on people to align the bolt and bolt carrier together. But because of that, there's this ring that's been implemented on this bolt carrier pin that hits the receiver during spikes or just repetitive firing, and that hitting the back of the receiver right here can cause a burr, and that burr will make the striker kind of not cycle as nice, or just kind of be problematic in that sense. Now, again, this is something that you can do one of two ways if you encounter this problem. I mean, many people did not even encounter it for the first place. I mean, there's countless games and whatnot. But if you do experience this problem, you have two ways of solving it. A file, and you basically take it. This is kind of like a rounded file. I've heard people use like a chainsaw file. I mean, there's many different options. You put this through at an angle, and you get rid of the burr, because the burr is being done on the underside of this thing. Now, if you don't feel comfortable with this, or you don't think you should have to do that, well, I agree with you. But it is because of the two-piece bolt carrier pin that it's happening. Future development on this will compensate for that. But current 468s that use the split pin will or may encounter that. So that's how you solve it. Take a little file at an angle, and you'll see that the striker comes in and out very easily. Again, if you don't feel that you should do that, or you don't have the tools, or don't want to go buy the tools, or whatever the case may be, call RAP4, we'll take care of it for you. All right, I think that pretty much covers it. We covered air, we covered the possible damage to the receiver that the bolt carrier pin can do. Again, it's not guaranteed to happen, but if it does, contact us. Perhaps the most important thing on operation on this, which I'll assemble it again just to kind of get that together, is make sure under any circumstance that the bolt carrier pin is aligned properly. Let me kind of explain what would happen under a circumstance that it does not. The one-piece bolt carrier pin will be something that looks similar to this. It doesn't come off the bolt, and it's very nice because you don't lose anything. This is a reason why we designed a split pin to begin with, and that's just because we were fearful of somebody taking the receiver, aligning it incorrectly, closing the upper receiver on the lower, and then firing. Because what will happen, and I'll show you right now, what will happen is, so let's say this is our upper and lower receiver, you closed it, but instead of putting it in the hole on the striker, it ended up behind. This is a perfect example of how this could happen. And this is why we made a split pin design. So you take your shot, bang. The striker will go forward, go through its full firing sequence, meaning it's going to hit the poppet valve, recock, but now it's going to hit the back of the striker against your bolt carrier pin, meaning your bolt did not move forward, it wasn't connected. It's going to hit the bolt carrier pin, and well, that right there can cause all kinds of terrible things. Let me tell you what that would be. The striker, if the bolt carrier pin is inside, It's designed to take that, so during this firing sequence it's going to handle it just fine. You won't have any problems. But if the bolt is behind the striker, it's going to go forward, come back, hit the bolt carrier pin, and now this thin part of the striker may deform. And if it deforms, you may not be able to take out the striker anymore because it deformed the striker to the point where it can't come out. At that point, you basically need to kind of either take like a power tool and file it down and replace your striker. That's the reason why we made this split design. And the split design, basically, it's, you know, lesser of two evils if somebody was to put the striker, the bolt carrier behind the striker incorrectly. Okay? So let's go through a final assembly just to kind of recap everything. You put in your striker, press the trigger as you're putting it inside. With the single piece bolt carrier, you wouldn't have to do this, but with the split piece, you'll put it in at this point. This is the one advantage that you have here. You can kind of press it forward to make your valve assembly, your striker assembly insert easier. Clockwise to put it back in, recock it, take your mag well back, you put it through the center, make sure your trap system, your anti-drop trap system is behind the spring here. We already covered that earlier, of course. Align everything together, that goes through. Okay, put your upper receiver on. Right, put your bolt inside. Your gasket that goes in between the two. Want to make sure that as you're closing it, you're properly aligned, as I mentioned before. There we go. Test to make sure that you assemble that properly. Take your air source. Okay, so you back it up till your guide bar and everything aligns properly. We covered this earlier, but just as a recap, take your buttstock over. Again, this is kind of like a more paintball friendly version, so you can take it out very easily. Align all that. It is 6-position buttstock, and now you have your 468. It's ready to fire once again, and that's pretty much it. Again, thank you very much. This has been a pretty comprehensive video about the 468. The 468, however, is a very adaptable system, so there is many more facets to it. So this is basically 468 101. There's different magazine systems, different ways of tuning it, different ways of getting the best out of your 468. So stay tuned for more videos from RAP4, and of course you will find them at rap4.com and YouTube. Thank you very much.